Lime Rock Park in Lime Rock, Connecticut. It is an absolutely gorgeous racetrack. It's a bull ring as well, the shortest racetrack that any of the IMSA competitors face all year long, 1.5 miles of twisty-turny asphalt. That is a mega challenge for all of these teams and drivers here today. Weather absolutely beautiful. The northwestern part of the state is where Lakeville, Connecticut is. Just south of that is Lime Rock. Lime Rock Park actually on the National Register of Historic Places, the third longest running, continuous running, I should say, road course in the United States. Turn 1, a great passing zone, then the uphill. You've got a chicane there at the bottom of the uphill. You'll have to navigate through, then back onto the straight to West Bend through the notorious downhill and onto the front straightaway. That is a lap of Lime Rock Park. It takes less than a minute, and it takes some fortitude to get the passing done around this racetrack. Welcome in, everyone. Like I said, an absolutely gorgeous day for racing here in Connecticut. Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw with you, and this is what is great about the park. The fans, they are race fans. They know racing inside and out. They are on the hill, starting to bake in the morning sunshine. Should just get better and better throughout the day, and they are here to see some great racing, and they will see it in multi-class VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Jeremy, there's not a better racetrack in the country, I think, than for a series like the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. 2 different classes, prototypes, and GT-based machinery. It should be a good one today.
It should indeed, Brian. And yeah, the fans here, they are tremendous. And the weather is absolutely perfect this morning. There was supposed to be showers and thunderstorms and all sorts of horror stories from yesterday because they've had a lot of rain, of course, in this region lately. None of that materialized. In fact, I was told that the track services people were out there watering the sides of the racetrack this morning because yesterday there were a lot of people putting wheels off on the dirt at the exit of the downhill and the going into the right-hander as well, and clouds of dust were thrown up, so they're trying to damp that down a little bit. So perfect weather conditions, a good crowd already beginning. It's an early start, but yeah, tremendous enthusiasm, and this is going to be fun.
Almost looked like Dakar Rally at times yesterday, right? With dropping wheels and the amount of dust that was thrown in the air.
Man, it was wild, wasn't it? I couldn't believe it. I mean, I know they've had a lot of rain in this region, and I was shocked to see the huge plumes of dust that were thrown up and sort of hanging in the air. It was really bizarre.
Well, and we sit kind of down in a bottom. There's a creek on the backside down along the Paul Newman Strait, which if you are a hardcore race fan and you've been a fan of Lime Rock Park for a long time, you'll recognize by the name of No Name Strait, but there's a creek that runs around the backside of that and actually back through turn 2. So we're kind of in a low area, but that's just hats off to the grounds crew here, the maintenance crew at Lime Rock Park. They obviously have improved the drainage over the years, and it is drained incredibly well. You talk about it's been a relatively damp period of time here in the Northeast, but this racetrack is drained incredibly well, and it is in great shape for racing today.
It is, and there's been so much work put into this place over the years. I remember when I first came here, it was somewhat ramshackle, but it had tremendous character. Nowadays, it looks beautiful, but it still has that same character. It's a tremendous place to come and watch some racing. Just it's you'd think it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, surrounded by trees and whatever, but it's a beautiful part of the world, and a track that, yes, it's short and it's sharp, but it's a track that the drivers love because it's a real challenge, Brian.
I forgot about the stream down the front straightaway as well. It's not at all uncommon to drive out here on days when there's nothing going on the racetrack and watch people fly fishing in some of the streams around here. But absolutely a beautiful racetrack. Skip Barber took over the facility back in the 80s and improved it, and then has continued to work with a group to make it better and better every year. The track surface has gotten better. And really, Jeremy, I think the thing that has impressed everyone over the last, we'll call it the last decade, is the improvements in the paddock area. When I first raced here, the paddock was all gravel, but now it's all asphalt, and the facilities have improved greatly.
Well, they certainly have, and as a new group came in here a few years ago, Skip's still involved very much so, because it's his sort of legacy, this place. I mean, the Skip Barber Racing School was based here at Lime Rock Park for many, many years, and it's taught a lot of drivers the skills to go racing, and several of them in this race today.
Did you ever do a Skip Barber school at Lime Rock?
Absolutely.
Did I teach it?
I did a skippy race here back in '93. It was the 35th anniversary of the Formula Ford at the time. There was a great turnout of cars, and Skippy put on a race here for various people. I was lucky enough to be invited. It had a tremendous time. It was so much fun.
This is where I pretty much started my career at Skip Barber.
Yeah.
I worked with him for a couple of years. It's the first time I ever drove a Barber Saab Pro car, the first Pro car that Skip Barber ever created. Came here to test it, but a great facility. VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw with you. Cars on the racetrack now as they head out for the first of 3 reconnaissance lap. They'll pair up second time by. We'll go green third time by, Jeremy. And talk about the 2 different classes here. LMP3 based machinery in the P3 category, and then the GSX is GT4 based cars.
Yeah, that's right. Somewhat slimmer field than we had a couple of weeks ago at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, but some good fields as well. There's 6 LMP3 cars. There's 11 GSX cars. Let's run down the grid perhaps quickly, starting from the back. Angus Rogers will start kind of a 5. That's the Porsche 718. On the 8th row of the grid, Frank Depew in the 72 Rebel Rock Racing Chevrolet Camaro. It's a lone Chevy. The lone Aston Martin alongside him, that's Rob Ecklin, the kind of a 09 for automatic racing. The row 7 is Sebastian Carrazzo, the championship leader in GSX, starting a long way down the grid in that number 27 Kelly Moss with Riley Porsche. And then forward from him, it's pretty much all BMWs. Vin Barletta from Boston starts the Turner Motorsport kind of a 96 in the 13th position. Then the one interloper, it's the lone Mercedes in the race from Marilla Racing, Tim Probert in car number 65, and it was his birthday yesterday, Tim, so happy birthday to you. Hope you can have a good result today. He was fastest of the Bronze Cup contenders in qualifying yesterday. And forward from him on the grid, it's all BMW. Patrick Wilmot in caliber 88, that's the older F82 BMW M4 GT4 for the Split Decision Motorsports team. Ahead of him, Stephen Cugliari making his debut this weekend from Manhattan, but it was brought up in Connecticut, caliber 25 for Auto Technic Racing. And then alongside him, the second in the championship is Francis Seldorf, looking for his first win in the second of the Turner Motorsport BMW SS car number 95. But to do so, he's got to contend with 2 more Auto Technic Racing BMW M4 GT4s, a new G82 version from locally based in New Milford, Connecticut. Car number 24, young Jake Walker will start second on the grid in GSX. And on the pole, John Capestrio de Betz, car number 26. Moving on to LMP3 for MLT Motorsports, it's the Ligier car number 54 is Adrian Kunzel. Alongside him making his debut this weekend for Muehlner Motorsports in a Duquesne is Denny Dupont in car number 18. Row 2, Courtney Crone, car number 99 for 47 Motorsports, that's another Duquesne. Ligier alongside for Forte Racing, powered by US Racetronics. Brian Thenis in car number 77, really good job by him. And then the regular two main contenders at the front of the field. Second position by less than a tenth of a second for JDC Motorsports in the Duquesne. Car number 73 is the fastest of Bronze Cup contenders. That's Dan Goldberg, who is the championship leader. And on the pole position, though, having celebrated his 21st birthday just 1 week ago, in car number 3 for Junior 3 Racing, the Ligier car number 3, that's Bijoy Garg. He will start on the pole position.
Lights out on the Acura pace car, field down onto the front straightaway. P3 cars lead the way on pole. Bijoy Garg, Ligier inside, Duquesne chassis outside, green flag waves racing at Lime Rock in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. What a good jump by Bijoy Garg, and you see the GSX class just behind.
Yeah, Bijoy learned from his mistakes at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park a couple of weeks ago when he was lagging.
Oh, and a big crash already, Jeremy. That's in turn 1, that's the braking zone.
Is that Sebastian Carrazzo?
It looks like Carrazzo in the 27.
No. And Tim Probert. The birthday boy from yesterday. Wow, heavy damage to both cars. That's going to bring out a full course caution for sure. What happened there? It was Carrazzo was way back down the grid. He was one position behind Tim Probert at the start, but they've clearly made heavy contact, presumably with the barriers on the left-hand side of the racetrack.
Big contact indeed. Carrazzo had started back in 14th overall, and Tim Probert a couple of spots in front of him. That was in the braking zone for turn 1. You need to maintain your column formation and they should have been in the same column. Your column formation until after the start-finish line, but this was down in the break zone. That is the championship leader in GSX as we sit right now. That's going to change by the end of the day, Jeremy, because he only had a 20-point lead over Moise Uretsky as we came into this race today. And let me throw something else at you, Jeremy. We've got another race this afternoon. I'm not sure those cars will be ready to run.
No, there's a lot of damage on that number 27 car, and he's going nowhere. Good to see him climbing out of that car. From Puerto Rico is Sebastian Carrazzo, but yeah, that's a heavy impact. And yeah, Moise Uretsky is second. Let's have a look, see if we can see what happened. And
oh, there was a BMW involved.
Yeah, that's the split decision car, Patrick Wilmot. What happened there? Yeah, Wilmot's on the bit on the grass, but that's way before the braking area. He gets on the brakes.
The car just lunges sideways. Wilmot's BMW just lunges to the left, almost like he gets some brake lock up or whatever, and the car darts left. Take a look to the right side of the screen, just in front of the yellow BMW. There it is. Boom. He collects Probert, and Probert collects Carrazzo, who's driver's left.
Classic pinball moves there, and you know, poor old Tim Probert and Sebastian Carrazzo, they were nothing to do with that incident until they were. I mean, it was nothing they could have done any differently whatsoever other than not be there. That was really, really unfortunate. And it looked maybe like Patrick Wilmot was sort of maybe got too close to the car in front of him going into that braking area, which would have been Francis Seldorf. He was kind of in between the two Turner Motorsport BMWs. And I think perhaps he had to kind of jink left a bit to avoid running into the back of Francis Seldorf. This is pure conjecture, I have to say, but that's what it kind of looked like to me from those angles we got there. Tremendous angle. That was, yeah. But just, gosh, what a horrible way to start the day and the weekend for these two contenders. Heavy damage to both cars.
At first, I thought Wilmot might have some lockup, but I think you might be right, Jeremy. When you look at it again, could be traffic in front of him, and he may have to take evasive action to the left. Let's look at it again. Slow motion there to the right, just in front of the yellow BMW. I don't know that he was that close. Was it the BMW to the right that he was moving away from?
Well, did he get a tap from the one behind him, which would have been Vin Barletta? Because Barletta all of a sudden dives to the inside there at the kind of last minute. I think it was just one of those really unfortunate incidents that there's no one necessarily particularly to blame. Wilmot moves to the outside.
I think he moves because of the BMW that's to his right.
Yeah, I think you're right. Who was kind of diving to the inside a little bit. And
the first of the Turner BMWs there, I think that may surprise him, and he moves slightly left, and when he does, there is no slightly left.
No. Well, there is, but the car's already there.
There's a great big Mercedes in the way.
And there's another car alongside him as well. Just kind of, trying to get a wide line and hoping for a clean run through there. Maybe he can then duck down to the inside on the exit of Big Bend, the sort of second apex of that long right-hander. But, of course, he didn't even get that far. So just you hate to see a race begin that way, and particularly, of course, for the championship leader. As you said, Moise Uretsky second in points coming into this weekend, but not here this weekend.
But not here, yeah. So
right. So Francis Seldorf. He's only 80 points behind coming into this weekend. Still looking for his first win is Francis.
And that may have been Francis Seldorf in one of the Turner BMWs. Well, obviously one of the two that was inside of Wilmot there, because when you look at the grid, well, actually, no.
Yes, because Seldorf was on the row in front of Patrick Wilmot,
so and
Vin Barletta was a row behind. So Wilmot was kind of sandwiched between those two Turner Motorsport BMWs. And last time out at north of the border, Francis had a really great weekend.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was super fast all weekend, but agonizingly for him, didn't come away with that long-awaited first victory. So he's hoping to put that rights here this weekend. He's from Boston, Massachusetts, so got a lot of family and friends here this weekend. And of course, the team is based up in this area as well. So a lot of support for that Turner Motorsport team.
Well, and the crew going to work, the AMR safety team going to work to get this taken care of. There's a look at the 88 of Patrick Wilmot, who, it just gets so congested down in turn one. It looks like he takes evasive action from the BMW beside him. And then, like you said, Jeremy, pinball effect. Good news is both of the drivers, Tim Probert out of his car, Sebastian Carrazzo out of the 27 Porsche. So good to see those drivers out. If you were looking at the shots and you saw the safety worker standing there with what we commonly call the jaws of life, that was not for getting drivers out of cars. The guardrail has significant damage to drivers left where they impacted. It's pushed back in. Those crews will use those hydraulic devices to separate the arm, go get it back into the shape that it needs to be in. They'll also assess the posts behind that guardrail and make sure that they are still rigid enough to support any kind of other impact that's there. So while you see some of that equipment that's out there, don't be alarmed by it. It's just the safety team here making sure that the barriers are in place and in place to do what they need to do, which is arrest vehicles like we just saw in this incident.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and this of course is the fastest part of the racetrack here. This long straightaway. I mean, even going away from the start, the cars would have been well over 100 miles an hour by the time they got into the braking area there, and yeah, that's a lot less than they would be when at full racing speed. So that makes it even more tricky going into the first corner, because when you're at full speed, you know where your braking point is. But when you're not at full speed, you're still accelerating away from the start. They wouldn't have yet reached their maximum velocity. Then the braking point that the drivers have to pick changes. And there's quite a few drivers in this field who don't have an awful lot of experience in race cars. So that's always a tricky thing to judge.
Well, that's the other thing about VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. It's for teams and drivers to learn their way up through the IMSA ladder, and you learn how to do these starts. Starts should be split. The prototypes will be up front, GSX cars behind, and typically you like to see a little bit of a bigger gap behind the prototype field before the GSX cars. Like you said, it's learning your way through, and this is the start real time. You see the split. Prototype cars accelerate away, and you can kind of already see what's happening in the back. Cars looking around, trying to find a way through and jockeying for position. Here comes the GSX field. And that's how quickly it happens.
Yeah, it does happen so quickly, doesn't it? And here's a view coming down the hill and into that diving turn, the final corner on the lap, the seventh and final corner on the lap, and the pace car pulls off to the inside, and now it's under control of the pole sitter for Joey Garg, and he gets a really good jump this time, unlike a couple of weeks ago, to take the lead of the race. But the pack in GX is much, much closer. You can see cars jockeying for position there, and then into the braking area, you can see a dab of the brakes there from the number 88 BMW, and then all of a sudden carnage takes place there. That's you just hate to see it.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, again, you look at it from a different point of view and you kind of get a different takeaway. Wilmot, aggressive on the start. He looks to the outside. I don't know. There's so much going on down there. Obviously, the BMW moves pretty sharply left. I don't know if that's a braking issue, if that was a steering issue because he thought he was too close to the BMW of Seldorf that was there beside him or whatever, but it doesn't really matter. The end result is what we're left with, and that is two crashed race cars. The good news is I saw the maintenance crew look at that fence one more time. They packed their equipment up into the back of their safety vehicle. They have left the scene. Flatbed's leaving with the car, so we should be able to go back racing here pretty soon. And from a driver's perspective, Jeremy, you've gotten all revved up. The adrenaline dump was there. When you saw the green flag, you are ready to go. For the drivers in the prototype, they had no idea what had happened behind them because it was so far behind them. What does that do to you as a driver when all of a sudden you're on this high, and then all of a sudden you're full course yellow?
Yeah, that's a good point, because now you've got to refocus again and get ready for the restart, and you never know how long it's going to be. Clearly, the drivers can see every time they come around, and the good news for them is here, even under yellow, it's only a minute and a half, so it's a short lap even behind the safety car, but they can see how that cleanup process is going, so they can get a grasp of when they're likely to be able to go back to green again. So look at that impact on that barriers, 4 layers of Armco there, but nothing too serious there. There's nothing that should cause any problems for later on in the day. That's certainly good news. The barriers absolutely did everything they're supposed to do on that in restraining those cars from going down into the creek, basically, which we would have done in the olden days. So the drivers when they get in from the restart, they can see now that both cars have moved from the original impact zone. So they know that the restart is not too far away, so they can begin now to gear themselves up again for this restart.
Round 7 of the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge from Lime Rock Park underway. Crash right at the green as they headed down to turn 1 for the GSX field. Patrick Wilmot involved. Sebastian Carrazzo got the short end of the stick, and so did Tim Probert in his Murillo Racing number 65 Mercedes AMG. And for Carrazzo, that has championship implications, but as you pointed out, Jeremy, Moisey Uretsky not here. Francis Seldorf may be the big benefactor of this by the end, but when I look at championship points in GSX, the thing that is amazing to me, no one in the top 12 in points has won a race this year, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, isn't it? I really feel for Tim Probert. I mean, he's a great character, and he would have been well placed in the bronze category. He was fastest of the bronze contenders in qualifying yesterday, and a good opportunity with several drivers ahead of him in the points table not here this weekend. A good opportunity to make up some ground in the championship, and it's all gone wrong. And just a day after his birthday, that's cruel.
Yeah, not a good birthday present. Talk about championships. The championship in the P3 category is right here with the first and second cars on the racetrack. Bijoy Garg, second in the championship, leads the field on the restart. 2 wins on the season, looking for win number 3 because Dan Goldberg, right behind him, is the championship leader with 3 wins. So this championship far from over in P3.
And you talked about this being a learning opportunity for drivers to get used to multi-class racing. It's been a steep learning curve for Bijoy Garg. He's been doing open wheel racing for most of his career so far. So he's only just turned 21 just last weekend, but he's done a lot of racing over the last few years and a massive amount of testing as well. So he's been well prepared, but as we saw at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, he was slow off the mark in both of the starts. Well, he's learned from that one because both at the initial start and this restart here, he's right on the gas and already putting out a little bit of a gap between himself and Dan Goldberg in second position.
JCD, John Capestro de Betz, leads in the GSX category. His first start of the season. Not surprising to see him up front at all in his Autotechnic BMW. Super quick race car driver and just testing the waters here and really helping that Autotechnic team, helping Jake Walker move forward. And it's one of those deals where when you've got a driver like JCD, you want to use him as much as you can. Patrick Wilmot aboard the 88, trying to use his BMW to stay in second place and chase down the 95 of Francis Seldorf just in front. And that number 95 bright yellow Turner Motorsports BMW. 2 of those bright yellow BMWs out there. The white hood is Francis Seldorf. Finn Barletta aboard the 96 in the fray as well.
Yes, that is right. And the Finn Barletta had briefly got past Patrick Wilmot, excuse me, but he managed to redress that balance now as Patrick. He's going to set sail and try to put some pressure on Francis Seldorf as well, but a really good start at the front of the field. There's a battle for third position with Brian Thenis just ahead of Courtney Crone, who's putting on the pressure there. Brian Thenis, one of the Bronze Cup contenders, excuse me, in that car for US Racetronics by Forte Racing, the Ligier, running in third position. Lost a little bit of ground to Dan Goldberg the first couple of laps, but staying ahead of Courtney Crone, who's a very talented youngster. It's from California, these 2 drivers.
Courtney Crone aboard the bright red number 99. I should say, easy for me to say, right, Jeremy? Aboard the 99, the Red Dragon, back in IMSA competition. See the livery that so many people watched on prototypes with Alex Gurney and John Fogarty in them for years, and now Courtney Crone carrying those colors and really putting pressure on Thenis. This is another battle for championship position. Thenis third in the championship, Courtney Crone 5th, but Lance Wilsey not here this weekend, and we miss him. Wilsey 4th in the championship as we left Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. That will change today with his absence, but it's a good battle for not only 3rd on the racetrack, but 3rd in the championship.
It is, and Courtney Crone, she had probably her best weekend a couple of weeks ago north of the border at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. She was challenging there for the podium position. There were a few more cars there last weekend. It's certainly a stouter field than we got. We only got 6 cars here this weekend. But Brian Cedars has really stepped up there in that Forte Racing powered by US Racetronics, kind of a 77, running a really nice job in the third position. Meanwhile, out front, Bijoy Garg and Dan Goldberg, they're trading fastest laps between each other. Last time around, it was Dan Goldberg who set the fastest lap of the race at a 50.66 seconds. This time, 4 tenths quicker for Bijoy Garg, 50.266 for our race leader, Bijoy Garg, and that compares to his pole time from yesterday of a 49.1.
Patrick Wilmot aboard the 88, not letting Seldorf get ahead. The split decision motorsport driver, Patrick Wilmot, that silver and blue BMW, looks to the inside. Nothing doing in turn one this time. Seldorf, that bright yellow Turner Motorsport BMW, obviously different BMWs that are out there. Wilmot aboard the slightly older version. You can call it a deficit if you want to, Jeremy, because it's not the latest and greatest, but I'll tell you what, right now the lap times are there in the competition. For instance, Seldorf saying, you can let go now, I'd like to get away, but Wilmot not letting that happen.
It's not, is it? This is a good battle between these two, and yeah, that Patrick Wilmot, it's a small team, Split Decision Motorsport. They're based out of Tennessee primarily, and they're a great story in themselves. Patrick Wilmot, he's been kind of knocking on the door, trying to get into racing for many, many years, and the team principal of Split Decision Motorsports is Jimmy Ellis, and they're racing in the memory of a good friend of that whole team, Rob Farley, who was killed in a road crash 10 years ago. And there's so much passion and enthusiasm in that team, that older BMW, that silver and blue car, that's really putting the pressure on Francis Seldorf, who is effectively now our, at the moment, championship leader in the GX category.
That F82 BMW that Patrick Wilmot drives, there was smoke that I saw in Big Bend, turn 1 and 2, and I couldn't tell if it was perhaps out of the exhaust, which is, there's a double exhaust out the back. It looked like it was predominantly off the left side. What worries me about that, Jeremy, is that it wasn't smoke from the engine. It could have been tire smoke. This racetrack, absolutely brutal. No, it's not right out from under the center of the car. The 88, you see it right out of the center, and it looks like in right-hand turns is where you really see it. There it is. It's getting worse.
It is.
And if it gets better, that's a problem, because that just means there's no more oil left in it.
Yeah, as you say, it's coming out of the middle of the car, isn't it? Not one side or the other. That is not. That does not bode well. Oops, it's getting a lot worse.
A lot worse. I would think that with the speed that the car has, it's not engine related. I think it's drivetrain related, right out of the center.
Yeah, it's that way. The leaders, meanwhile, the LMP3 leaders working their way through the GSX traffic already. Bijoy Garg, he's extended his lead just a little bit on that last lap, and he dives to the inside, and Patrick Wilmot pulls off the road there. He could have put that car into a safe location. He realizes that day is done.
You know, and that's a professional move by Patrick Wilmot. Really, I'm sure the Split Decision Motorsports team said, hey, buddy, day is done. You may not be able to see it. Maybe he could feel it from inside the car, but this is what you do, not only for yourself and your team, but you do it for all the other competitors on the racetrack, because you certainly don't want to oil down the track and create problems for the other competitors that are out there. No problem right now for Bijoy Garg as he leads. And we talk about a training ground. This is it, Jeremy. Multi-class racing. It's like AAA ball, right? I mean, it's major league stuff, just not at that next level speed-wise, but they learn to work through traffic, these different classes of cars that are out there. Bijoy Garg, we saw this at CTMP. He was very willing, I think, to be a little more aggressive than Dan Goldberg was in traffic, working his way through.
Well, age will do that for you, won't it? I mean, he's 21 years of age. Dan isn't. Dan himself, he raced in the old IMSA Prototype Challenge 10 years or more ago. He was pretty successful then, just as a gentleman racer. He's a builder by trade in Central Florida, and he's been very successful. He loves his racing. After the demise of the old IMSA Prototype Lights Championship, he kind of was out of racing for several years, concentrating on the family and the business. But then he missed it. So he came back, he started doing some NASA racing. He won a national championship in the BMW in NASA competition, and then got back with Performance Tech Motorsports. There's Courtney Crone off the road. That's the Red Dragon car, Bob Stallings car for 47 Motorsports. Off the road is that Big Bend, I think, isn't it?
I think it is. And it's so easy to get wide there. I don't know if she was involved in working her way around traffic. The problem is the grass that's been picked up, and is there a left side tire down, or is that body rub? That tire's down on the left side. Perhaps that's the reason she went off the racetrack. I have to look at a replay and see if that tire's down on the way into the corner, but it is definitely down now.
Yeah, definitely down now. Well, I mean, she was virtually side by side as they came across the start-finish line, challenging for the third position. Here they are side by side into...
Oh, there is... Well, that was on the right side. So the contact...
Yeah. It's kind of weird, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, the contact was on the left rear, so that's what causes it. She's to the inside, and the contact there with the 77 right front of the 77 of Brian Thenis into the left rear of Courtney Crone, and I think that's what does the damage to that Michelin. And it's interesting. You look at the line that Courtney has into the corner. She may have been a little deep and not going to be able to get to that first apex. Brian Thenis went in ahead and started his turn in, but you look at that, and from both drivers' perspective, for Thenis, he's going, well, she needs to be turning in. But from Courtney's perspective, she says, if I'm not, you don't get to turn into me. So it'll be interesting to see how the officials look at that one.
Yeah, it will, yeah. I'm glad I'm not in race control at the moment, because when you dive down the inside there, particularly, I mean, Brian Thenis purposely kept her to a tighter line. He didn't pull out wide. So he made sure, he's been around this sport a long, long time. He raced former Atlantic cars back in the 90s. Used to be Pro Mazda or Star Mazda. Did a lot of racing in that, and pretty successfully as well. So he's been around this sport a long time. He knows how to make it difficult for somebody who's trying to make a pass, and that's what he did. And it's just a kind of,
And there was absolutely nothing wrong with what either one of them did until the contact happened. So it was like the way racing goes, right?
There wasn't until there wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
But meanwhile, Joy Garg said, thank you very much indeed. He's setting sail now. He's pulled away almost 5 seconds, that gap over Dan Goldberg now. And Dan Goldberg, they were separate. It's coming into this weekend. It was Dan Goldberg who led the points by just 50 over Joy Garg. And if the positions stay as they are right now, they will be tied on points in tomorrow's 8th round of this 12-race season.
Not tomorrow's.
Oh, not tomorrow. That's right. It's later on today, isn't it? Yeah, good point.
You better go back and have a bologna sandwich after this race, because you got another one coming up later in the afternoon. VP Racing SportsCar Challenge from Lime Rock Park. Jeremy Shaw, Brian Till with you. Good run right now. Joy Garg, second in the championship, leads over Dan Goldberg. There in the gray number 73. His Duquesne chassis trying to give chase, and Garg working through GSX traffic. VP Racing SportsCar Challenge, 2 different classes of cars. P3, the LMP3 based prototypes, and then GSX, which is GT4 based cars, the kind of sports cars that you see on the road that you want to drive. The BMWs, the Porsches, the Camaros out there, Mercedes AMG, you name it, they're there. And 45-minute sprint races, 2 races per weekend, and here at Lime Rock Park, 2 races on the same day. And Garg leads into Big Bend, turn 1 and 2. Yeah,
and he's comfortably running out front there in it's now Auto Technique Racing 1, 2, 3, that Milford, Connecticut-based team, just about 25 minutes away here from the racetrack. So they put a lot of effort into coming here this weekend. Brought 3 cars making their debut in this championship, and really kind of cool to see. I mean, they've worked so hard to get this program together. Rob Driscoll is the team principal. Charlie Scott kind of runs the show here for Auto Technique. Now 3 cars here running in the top 3 positions is a really stout effort. Young Jake Walker is running 2nd position at the moment in car number 24. Certainly a talent in the making. Just 17 years of age. But JCD, John Capestro Dubets, to give me his full proper name, from San Diego, California. He's another guy who's been knocking on the door of this sport for many, many years. A decade ago, he had quite a few starts in what is now the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, has some good, strong results as well. And it's been really only over the last 2 or 3 years that he's managed to get himself some professional opportunities to drive himself. In the meantime, he's been doing a lot of coaching, helps a lot of young drivers and older drivers get a foothold in the sport, develop their talents, and now he's getting an opportunity. And he's driving a whole bunch of different cars this season, is JCD. He's driving very successfully the Lamborghini Super Trofeo series for IMSA as well. Had some wins and even an overall pole position in that series, running in a Pro-Am class with an Am co-driver. And really, really cool to see. And young Jake Walker, just 17 years of age, he's also driving Lamborghini Super Trofeo series as well.
John Capestro de Betz has really kind of played super sub over the last couple of years before landing full-time rides, and that's what traffic will do to you as the 77 of Brian Thenis kind of gets moved aside, dealing with that GSX traffic coming into the alternate uphill, the chicane as some people call it, there at the end of the Paul Newman Straight. And you got to be kind of aware of where you are, and that moves Brian Thenis well back. Did he have to serve?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He had to serve a drive-through penalty for incident responsibility for that incident with Courtney Crone a little while ago. He was deemed to have turned in too soon, tagged the rear end of Courtney Crone's Ligier, and that's exactly as you described there, Brian. And race control took a dim view of that. He could have allowed her more space going into that corner, should have, and predicted what was going to happen there, but he didn't. So he's had to serve drive-through penalty. He's now lost a lap to the other leaders. Has he lost a lap?
I believe he has.
Yes.
I just don't know exactly where he is on this lap.
No,
if he hasn't lost a full lap, he's lost
I think he has.
9/10 of one. And that puts you way back. And, you know, it's as we saw it, and good close racing, that's what Lime Rock Park brings you. We call it a bull ring. One left-hand corner, the rest are right. You've got to take care of the left side tires, and traffic, you'll deal with it every lap, especially in multi-class racing. And around the 54, Kunzel goes running third at the time of that spin.
Yeah.
And that's going to cost him a position.
Yeah, and he was under increasing pressure there from Denny Dupont from Belgium, originally raced now in Montreal, Canada. Denny is driving double duty this weekend. He's also going to be in the Michelin Pilot Challenge race in the TCR car later on this afternoon. Denny Dupont, Munoz chicane closing in, and Adrian just he got a little bit too enthusiastic with the throttle coming out of the chicane, spins it around.
And if you're Dupont right behind him, you're going, no, you need to go that way. I don't want to have to deal with you. And a problem now trying to make up ground for Kunzel, tries to press a little too hard. Perhaps the tire's dirty from the off there at the uphill. Now a big problem at Big Bend.
Yeah, and that's he was under pressure there also from Brian Thenis. I think Thenis wasn't actually a lap down quite. And the two were very close together as they came across the line in that. So maybe we're not sure whether Kunzel was trying to maintain his position ahead of Thenis. Have a look.
No, he's all on his own and just slides a little wide, a little high.
Ouch.
Easy to do there at Big Bend. And as soon as the left rear drops off the racetrack, because the car is in such cornering load, you're done. You're gone. And so now, for Brian Thenis, if he has not lost a lap, he's back in the fight because the field will get back together. We'll have to go full course yellow.
Yeah, I think he's a lap down.
And this will be interesting.
Yeah, it will. As you say, we've got how long to go? 15 minutes remaining in this race. So we're just about half an hour of elapsed in this 45-minute race. That's a shame for Adrian Heberset. He's having a good run there, looking at the potential of a podium finish for the first time. It's his first proper season of racing for Adrian. He's originally from Hampshire in the UK, but has been based in New York City for many, many years now. And he brought a Lotus Elise to do some track days several years ago, and he broke his. In addition to that, he's a sportsman in general. He was an avid skier, broke his leg, and he was 5 weeks in the hospital recovering from that, during which his wife suggested he should get another hobby. Well, that's sad to relate. The hobby turned out to be motor racing.
Yeah. And she made a mistake.
Yeah, she certainly did. She's regretted that one, I think, ever since.
So the safety team there struggling to get the cockpit door open with that side impact. It seems to have jammed the latch just a little bit there on the left side. So this should be a pretty quick grab and go. 45-minute sprint races in the VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. We'd like to get back to green as soon as we can, closing in on 14 minutes to go now here from Lime Rock Park. And again, we talk about a training series, Jeremy, and where you learn. And I think about the mistake that was just made up in the uphill. Part of learning the craft of racing isn't just learning to control the race car, it's learning to control your mind after making a mistake. And you wonder if perhaps for Kunzel, with that problem up at the uphill still in the driver's mind as you get to turn one and that little loss of concentration, it truly should be what is behind you is behind you. You'll deal with it when you get to it the next lap. Makes the mistake in the uphill, gets back on track, and then if he's still thinking about that mistake, it leads to this mistake.
Another one, yeah. I mean, you're a pilot, and I got my pilot's license a long time ago now. But I remember one of the many phrases that stayed with me from my instructor was, "If you make one mistake, don't make another."
Yeah.
Particularly, it's true in an airplane, and it's also true in motor racing as well. Crossover between those two pastimes, and unfortunately, that's exactly what Adrian did there. So the good news is that the tyre barrier certainly did its job there and arrested a lot of energy from that car, and hopefully that will be able to be repaired by that MLT Motorsports team for later on this afternoon.
Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw with you, VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, round 7 of the 2023 season from Lime Rock Park. And this racetrack, it all happened so fast. And talk about putting mistakes behind you, Jeremy. I'll tell a story on myself. I was on my way to my first Atlantic victory. I won't tell you the year, but it was a long time ago. Headed down No Name Straight, which is now the Paul Newman Straight here at Lime Rock Park. And I had such a lead. I was so impressed with myself. I was counting points and prize money and doing totals as to how much money I was making on the weekend as I headed into what was then the John Morton chicane that was at the top of the uphill at the time. It was in a different place. And in my addition, I had forgotten to add in the chicane that was at the top of the uphill, and I promptly spun, and guess what? I did not win my first Atlantic race that weekend. So if anybody knows about making mistakes at Lime Rock Park, I'll raise my hand. I certainly do.
Well, I did one that wasn't quite so consequential, but it was a Skippy race here, a Formula Ford race here, and I was congratulating myself on outbraking, having slipstream past my good friend Paul Fanner from Racer Magazine into Big Bend, and unfortunately I carried too much speed into the corner and probably ran out of talent, as he would say, halfway around the corner.
Yeah, never run out of talent in the middle of the corner and never get scared too late, right?
There you go.
But that's it.
I mean, learn from mistakes, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's the essence of motorsports. It's the essence of really any sport. You look at the curveball and you see how it came out of the pitcher's hand, and you're going to be ready for it the next time. You know, it's what you do with the education that you get, and really that's anything in life, is it not? You know, and so motorsports once again kind of parallels that. And Lime Rock Park is a good teacher.
Yeah, it is, and it is really one of the, because it's such a short lap here. It's a great track on which to learn, because you get to duplicate laps on a regular basis. You know, it's in most cars, it's less than a minute or around about a minute. The Skippy cars were just around about a minute here, if I remember correctly, and that repetition is what builds the skill, and being able to do it on a short track is a perfect learning track, I think, and it has been for so many drivers over the years.
Courtney Crone on pit road, the engine cover coming off the Duquesne chassis as the crew looks to the back, and you wonder, they're looking at the left rear. That's where the impact was when the contact was made with Brian Thenis down in turn 1. And you wonder if, in addition to damage to the Michelin tire, if perhaps a suspension component may be bent slightly back there. And here's the problem, Jeremy, with right-hand corners at this racetrack, only one is actually, it looks like a piece of debris that they pulled out. But with right-hand corners, it's the left rear that takes the load. And if that suspension component is moving at all, or is moving that tire to what we would call a toe-out position on load through these right-hand corners, that's going to make the rear of the car want to go to the front, and that is not what you want.
It's not. I mean, the good news, she was able to rejoin the race after that incident earlier on, and so I think now this 47 Motorsports team just treating it like a test session, try and find some more speed. If they can, if there is some damage, yeah, that's one thing. But otherwise, if the car's handling fairly well, and lap times have been pretty respectable. Her best lap in this race was a 51.6. Here's again a replay of what happened earlier on. She definitely left her braking too late there, but by the same token, Brian Athena should have kind of predicted that and left her a bit more space. Her best lap in qualifying was a 50.2, so just over a second away from her fastest time. And that's pretty much the same for everybody in this race. The fastest lap of the race, a 50.2 by our race leader, Bijoy Garg. That's against his pole time of 49.1. So, she's turned in some good lap times, says Courtney, and if the car is handling fairly well, maybe she'd like to make a change to that car in preparation for this afternoon's race.
Yeah, essentially, when you think of it from a crew standpoint, if there's any question at all about the car, obviously driver safety is always paramount, but the other thing is you've got to have a car to go racing with at 3:05 this afternoon. So they're going to make sure that that car is together and is working for her and not putting her in a position to endanger both herself and the car. They've got plenty of time after this race to prepare it for this afternoon's race, but they can't prepare it if it's bent and battered. So she needs to take care of that. They need to make sure she's got a good car underneath her right now, and then they can go back to work and get it ready for this afternoon's race. We're going to get ready to go back to green as the 54 has been loaded up on the flatbed and taken back to the paddock. They'll see if they can get that machine ready to go for this afternoon's race, and we should be ready to go back green here in another lap or two.
Yes, indeed. And there is Adrian Kunzel's car being brought back to the pit lane, looking somewhat the worse for wear. But considering the speed at which he went off the racetrack there, damage not that bad. And hopefully they'll be able to get that car repaired again in time for this afternoon's race. Hats off here to Denis Dupont, who all of a sudden found himself in third position. By the way, Brian Athena did not fall a lap off the lead after making that drive-through penalty. So he is back on the lead lap and in fourth position, therefore, behind Denis Dupont when they come up for the restart. So that is good news for his prospects.
VP Racing SportsCar Challenge back under green from Lime Rock Park as Bijoy Garg on the hammer as they come down the front straightaway on this restart. Now, the field not split like you see a lot of times in the IMSA WeatherTech SportsCar Championship. So there is a GSX car. John Capestro de Betz was in there between Brian Thenis and Denis Dupont on the restart. They made quick work of him, and now Thenis aboard the 77 through the right-hander onto the Paul Newman straight, really beginning to put pressure on Dupont just in front. And for Dupont, this is not the car he's used to driving. Thenis thinking nothing of the incident that he had earlier and the penalty that he got, aggressively prodding, probing, trying to find a way through Dupont as they went into the alternate uphill into the chicane.
Yeah, but unfortunately not decisive enough there. If he'd have braked a little bit later, got absolutely alongside, there'd be no way for the number 18 car to turn in. It was kind of a half-hearted move there to the inside for Brian Thenis, and wisely backed out of it. He kind of sacrificed himself there by running over that inside curve to make sure there was no contact with Denis Dupont, and that's cost him a fair bit of ground, which he's now going to have to make up again. It has done so very quickly, hasn't it? Wow.
Looks like there's a little bit of damage to the back of Dupont as well aboard the 18, the blue and white Mueller Motorsports LMP3 machine. That cheese wedge that we call it there just behind the right rear tire has come ajar, and I think that's from that contact that he had with Thenis.
Yeah, I think you're right. And meanwhile, Bijoy Garg, he's disappeared at the front of the field. And Dan Goldberg now in second position, solo second position, but this battle for third is well and truly on with Denis Dupont having it at the moment. Brian Thenis wanting it. and he's carrying a lot of speed through the downhill there. You see, he's going to have a run on the front straight, but I don't think he's quite close enough to have a look to the inside heading into Big Bend.
Oh, he looked inside there, and I mean, he is on a charge. DuPont, not a lot of experience in this LMP3 car and VP Racing Sports Car Challenge, and two different chassis right now. DuPont aboard a Duquesne chassis, Thenis in the Ligier just behind. So two different aerodynamic signatures on these cars, and for DuPont in the Duquesne, you wonder about the aerodynamics on the back of his number 18 right now with that cheese wedge askew.
Yeah, some good battles going on here. He's having to work hard for that third position, and some good battles going on at GS as well, the GSX as well. John Campestro de Betz has got a pretty handy lead once again already over Jake Walker, about a second or so from young Jake Walker, who's coached, by the way, by Buddy Rice, former Indianapolis 500 winner, and now part of a management group as well. Here's this battle a little bit farther back through the field as Courtney Crone works their way through, and that he certainly delayed there the third of the Auto Technic racing cars. That's Stephen Cugliari, who's now coming under increasing pressure from Francis Seldorf, looking to the outside into Big Bend.
That is a long way to go for Seldorf aboard the 95, the yellow Turner Motorsports BMW. And you saw it, that traffic works for you or against you. It depends on where you encounter it. Courtney Crone working her way through really held up Cugliari, and that allowed Seldorf to close in and pounce. Almost got the job done in Big Bend that time, but now right there on the rear wing.
Yeah, this is good stuff here. And Cugliari, for his debut in a GT4 car, that's a really impressive run by the number 25 car from Manhattan, New York. And very accomplished guy is Steve. But he was actually diagnosed with ADHD at the age of 5, but since then he's gone on to get a law degree from Fordham University, so it clearly didn't set him back too much. A real inspiration is young Stephen. I had a nice chat to him yesterday. Say young Stephen, he's 29 years of age, I call that young. And you know, he's been sort of dabbling at racing over the last few years only, but not done an awful lot of racing. And this is his first time in an IMSA car. Really excited for the opportunity and making a good job of it as well.
Saw Rob Eklund there aboard his Aston Martin doing a good job as well. He's beginning to put pressure, his automatic racing Aston Martin really putting pressure now on Vin Barletta just in front of the second of the Turner Motorsports BMWs, the 96. Eklund with a lot of experience, so does Automatic Racing have with this Aston Martin platform, and now Aston Martin on BMW. They head out of the uphill towards West Bend. Can't get it done there. Here's what you want to do, Jeremy, if you're Rob Eklund. Get the run through the downhill. Hard to make a pass here, but he's going to look to the inside. That's where you get checked up, and you may lose any advantage that you have. If you can get the run through the downhill, maybe even slow down to go fast, so to speak. Back off the car as you go underneath the bridge. Get the run. You get a better shot at it down in turn 1.
Yeah, it's a super battle between these two, and Rob Eklund and that Aston Martin putting the pressure on Vin Barletta as the battle for third and fourth comes down the downhill one more time. It'll be white flag next time around, I think, for our race leader. We're inside a minute to go in this race, and still Brian Thenis looking to the inside there of Jenny Dupont, but no way through. The Belgian in his very first race in an LMP3 car doing a really nice job to hold on to that third position.
Yeah, Dupont,
particularly with the damage.
Oh, the 3 car, this is what it looks like for your leader working through traffic. Garg passed a GSX car on the way into the uphill, now working through Frank Depew through West Bend. You've got to be aggressive. He has been all day long. That's why he's in the lead. Almost 9 seconds right now over championship leader Dan Goldberg. Aggressive is one thing, but you got to be safe as well. You need to protect this lead as in the closing stages here at Lime Rock Park. Last lap.
Last lap, going into that last lap, he's got a clear road in front of him. Now he's already got almost 10 seconds he's pulled out over Dan Goldberg in second position. So a really emphatic win on the cards here for Joy Garg. 21st birthday last week. What a way to celebrate.
Eklund looks into the inside through the right-hander. Nothing doing there. Gets the nose chopped off his Aston Martin. Garg through the uphill one last time in competition. The next time through, It will be on a cool down lap. Will he be the winner when that happens? Down through the downhill. Junior 3 Racing looking for another win in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Bijoy Garg not only looking for a win, but for a move up in the championship. Will he get it? He takes the checkered flag at Lime Rock Park. Win number 3 on the season for Bijoy Garg.
Yeah, and well clear of the rest. But I tell you what, Dan Goldberg was coming under increasing pressure towards the end. He really struggled to get his way through the traffic, but does finish in second place, but only less than a second ahead of Denis Dupont, Brian Thiener. So second, third, and fourth, pretty much nose to tail as they cross the line. But looking at the timing of scoring, that was a really tight finish there. But meanwhile, in GSX, John Capestro de Betz on the pole position, his debut in this championship, and just one corner to go now for the Southern Californian.
Diving through the downhill on debut, John Capestro de Betz, Autotechnic Racing, the BMW M4 wins at Lime Rock Park, and the celebrations will begin. What a great showing for that Autotechnic team. First, second, third, Jake Walker second, Cugliari third. Autotechnic sweeps the podium at Lime Rock.
Perfect performance for that locally based team, and JCD, he'll be thrilled with that one, rightly so. He never put a foot wrong there, led from start to finish from the pole position. Got the fastest race lap as well at 56.3, which is within half a second of his fastest time yesterday in qualifying. So excellent performance by him, and hats off to Bijoy Garg. No mistakes this time around. He made some north of the border last time out. None at all this weekend, or today so far at least. A perfect drive for him. Comes away with, this is his third victory of the season, and this will bring him level on championship points with Dan Goldberg, who finished second today, but only just.
And we look at the fastest lap
time.
I beg your
pardon. No, he won't. Sorry, I beg your pardon. He made up 30 points of that 50-point deficit. So Dan Goldberg will still lead by 20 going into this afternoon's race, Brian.
And I was talking about fastest laps, Jeremy. They are important. They set the grid for the race at 3:05 this afternoon. So Bijoy Garg looks like he'll start from the pole, and the same for John Capestro de Betz. So maybe looking for a repeat here this afternoon. VP Racing Sports Car Challenge from Lime Rock Park. An exciting one. It started from the get-go with the incident down in turn 1, and then some great multi-class racing here at Lime Rock. We talk about this being a feeder series, Jeremy, and what I see in Bijoy Garg is a driver who's experimenting with a lot of different types of racing in his young career, and it's paying off.
It is, and he's racing these cars in Europe as well, so getting lots of experience anywhere he possibly can. And this sport is all about experience. The more track time you can get in as many different cars as you can, the better off you're going to be. He had his first top 5 finish in a USF Pro 2000 championship car a couple of weeks ago as well, so he's definitely on the rise, and this will boost his confidence even more. Meanwhile, by the way, in GSX, with that DNF today for Sebastian Carrazzo, and the 4th place finish for Francis Seldorf, I reckon unofficially they will be tied for the points lead in GSX prior to this afternoon's race. So you've got to hope that somehow that Kelly Moss team can repair that Porsche in order for Sebastian Carrazzo to be able to defend his championship lead.
A couple of teams left to spend the next few hours scratching their heads trying to find a way to the front of the field in VP Racing Sports Car Challenge. Bijoy Garg, congratulations to him for his victory in P3, and John Capestro de Betz, the entire Autotechnic team in GSX. We'll do it all over again, 3:05 green this afternoon. You'll see it right here on Peacock. Thanks for joining us. For Jeremy Shaw and Brian Till, we'll see you later this afternoon. VP Racing Sports Car Challenge.